Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zane here, and today I am bringing you the second episode of Trainer Tip Tuesdays, a new weekly series on this channel where I cover one topic in competitive Pokemon and VGC 2015 and tell you a bunch of tips and personal advice I can give on that topic. Last week we covered Team Preview and a lot of you guys appreciated that, so thank you so much for the support you showed on that one. If you have not seen it, I will link it in the description below. Today we'll be talking about another general but very important aspect of competitive Pokemon, which is getting better and improving your game. As always, if you enjoyed the series, please show your support by leaving a like on the video. It just takes a quick second, it would mean a lot to me. I'd also really appreciate, as always, any comments or feedback you can give on this episode and the series. So, without further ado, let's just jump into it. So first of all, I'm going to start this video off by giving you a bunch of personal pieces of advice that I've really taken away from my years of playing competitive Pokemon. I think one of the most important things nowadays in this era, especially in VGC 15, is you should really take advantage of all the content out there if you're trying to get better as a player. The reason I say this is because back when I was starting out in VGC, you know, its very first year between 2008 and the consequent years 09, 10, 11, there was so little content out there. You know, official tournaments weren't streamed. Even battle videos were just difficult to come by. You know, Nugget Bridge, which is one of the best resources out there for competitive Pokemon in VGC nowadays, was not a thing. So it was really difficult to really, you know, learn from other players, and a lot of us just relied on practicing and watching, you know, some games and battle videos that were posted online. Nowadays, we live in an era where YouTube is a thing. You know, myself, Alex Agloza, Baz Anderson, we're all players who played at Worlds and try to make content on a regular basis, which is helpful, I hope, and we're all just doing our best to help the game grow. Nugget Bridge is a thing. Eggy Emporium, which was run by Wolfie Glick and Marcus Thatcher, is still around. So there's so many of these great resources out there. You should definitely take advantage of them. Nugget Bridge is really one of the biggest ones because there's so many, even like world champions, national champions, regional champions, so many players who have top cut. Just basically almost all the top players are around on Nugget Bridge, and there are just so many great articles there. Even if it's not relevant to, say, this particular metagame, I think it's valuable to just read what the top players have to say. Definitely don't be afraid to take a couple of ideas from Nugget Bridge or from any other content, really, just because when people make content in general, you know, they put it out there because they want to help the metagame develop, they want to help the game grow. So don't be afraid to borrow an idea here and there because it can definitely help, and there are examples of top players who have just, you know, relied on using other teams and doing really well with it. Of course, you know, I don't encourage you to just steal teams without understanding the idea behind it, but definitely my point behind this is feel confident and try out, you know, things if you're running into a mental block. The second one is also a really big piece of advice, which is about RNG and bad luck. I think a lot of the times we like to blame our losses on bad luck because Pokemon is a game that's inherently, you know, luck based. But the reality is, I think one thing that all the top players in this game will tell you is like, sure, luck is a thing, but the reality is it's not as big as a thing as a lot of us make it out to be, especially starting out players, you know, players who like to just blame every single one of their losses on luck and whatnot. And of course I'm being realistic, you know, I've had games where I've played perfectly until the very end and lost because of a Draco Meteor miss. That's a thing, you know, it's okay. There are sometimes losses that are absolutely uncontrollable, but honestly, those losses are pretty rare. Like, when I look at all my battles, there's so few where I can say, wow, I truly outplayed my opponent every turn here and I just got unlucky and lost. You know, there were points in those battles where I could have just played better to not put myself in a bad position. You know, I think one of the best examples of this is my 2013 top 4 set at Worlds against Ryosuke Kosuge, where he was basically able to beat me by using Thunder Wave and Swagger to the best of his abilities and outplaying me as well. So, you know, in that set I got pretty unlucky. I missed 5 of my 6 Will-O-Wisps, a lot of Thunder Wave and Swagger rolls that didn't go my way. But the thing is, I still could have won that set if I just targeted down his Thundurus earlier. The reason, you know, I just did not play as well in that set, and like I let RNG become a thing instead of just negating the Pokemon that, you know, made those RNG rolls even possible. So sure, we like to blame our losses on luck a lot of the times, but I think it's better, and it's a better mentality to have when you just look towards what you can do better. And I know I've been talking about this for a while, but I think it's a very important point. The next point is about losing. Definitely don't be afraid to lose. I think in our losses we learn the most from. What I like to do is watch over some of my battle videos, whether wins or losses, and really ask myself, did I make the best play this turn? Did I make a risky play that paid off, or did I just make an absolute terrible play that could have been better? You know, that's a great way to analyze what you did, and oftentimes, you know, when we lose, we make some more mistakes. So by looking at videos you lose, I think you can learn a lot, and definitely don't be afraid to lose. I think players are kind of scared of that sometimes, but honestly, I've learned so much from my losses, and I think those are what really pushed me to be a better player. The next piece of advice is really on practice. practice. I think a lot of players out there like to practice for the sake of practicing, and I say that you should practice efficiently. What I mean is, don't just play 30 games on Showdown or 10 games on Battlespot in a night for the sake of playing them. Go in with the mentality of trying to improve. I personally try to use practice to, 1, help me understand my team better and play better with that team. 2, make the best plays possible each turn, regardless of team. It helps me get into the mentality, am I making the best play this turn? 3rd is understanding the format and the metagame. The reality is the more games you play on Battlespot or Showdown, the more Pokemon and sets you'll run into, and that'll help you prepare yourself better for the future. Next one is mentally estimating damage calcs. I think for me, I've played this game for so many years, so I'm at the point where a lot of the times I can see a common Pokemon, use an attack on it, and most of the times I'll know whether it'll KO or not and exactly how much damage it'll do. This is something that comes with time and practice, but I think it's a very important skill that a lot of us could really use. And the final one is obviously just improving your prediction skills. Pokemon is a very prediction-based game, and the more practice you get in, the more confident you'll feel with your predictions. The final piece of advice that I think is really important is learning to respect your opponent, their team, and the game. I think a lot of players out there like to just discount their opponent if their opponent gets lucky. They like to get mad at the opponent's team, like, oh, your team is so bad, or, that team just relies on luck and whatnot. And trust me, I've been there too. I think sometimes even I have that kind of mentality, but it's not a good one. I think you get better at improving in the game when you learn to respect your opponent and their team. Say to yourself, yeah, maybe my opponent got a bit lucky, maybe their team was a bit luck-based, or maybe it's not a team I thought would have done well, but that doesn't matter. Ultimately they beat me, so what can I do? Look at the mistakes I made and really learn from that. And when I say respect the game, I mean respect the RNG, respect that, Pokemon is a luck-based game, and really learn from that. So, I think those are just a couple of points I can give you. Now let's talk about when you're in battle. Just remember that every game in Pokemon is a learning experience, whether win or lose. Most importantly, figure out a game plan and execute it. Identify your win conditions and use those to your advantage. I'll be talking about win conditions in a future Trainer Tip Tuesdays, but the most important thing is you understand how you're supposed to win the game. The next point is also, ties into that. Your goal is to ultimately knock out 4 of your opponent's Pokemon before they knock your 4 off. So it doesn't matter if you're up 4-2 if your opponent has a very good position and those 2 can beat your 4. I think one of the examples I can think of the most is Scott Glaza, one of the commentators at the Regionals, Nationals, and Worlds. I think a point he made about Sejum Park, who's obviously our current world champion, is that Sage is a player that likes to actually go down in Pokemon. He'll fall down, maybe 3-4, 2-4, 2-3 a lot of the times, but that's because Sejum's always got the end game in mind. He doesn't care if he loses 1 Pokemon if that Pokemon did its job. He doesn't care about losing 2 Pokemon if the last 2 Pokemon are already set up to beat your 4. So ultimately, it could be a 1-4 battle, but you could still win. The number doesn't count, it's really the end game. So that also ties into the next one, which is don't make unnecessarily risky predictions, because sometimes a lot of us like to make these predictions when we're ahead just to get further ahead. Really, you should make the best play possible every turn, and I know that's a bit generic, and I do want to do a video on this in the future as well, but basically, don't go Draco meeting a Fairy type if it's very unlikely that Fairy type's going to switch out, things like that. There are a lot of the times where you can make a safe play that will guarantee that you get the best out of your turn, rather than one where your opponent can just get back into the game. Definitely think out your each turn thoroughly. Take as much time as you need. A lot of the times, even myself, I'll lock into my moves and I'll realize, wow, I did not think that turn out, because I'll realize a play my opponent could have made. So don't be afraid. Take the time that you need, because Pokemon is a game that's very mental and you really need to think everything through. And finally, always consider risk versus reward. Pokemon is also a game of risk management, so this ties into predictions and whatnot, but really ask yourself, is it worth using this low accuracy move this turn, or is it better to just use a 100% accuracy move? Can I, account for missing a move this turn, and whatnot? Can I account for my opponent switching a Pokemon that would be bad for me? So these are all kind of important things you should really be asking yourself when you're in-game. These are things that you should not do, and they obviously tie into what you should do, but don't blame your losses on RNG. Don't play games, like I said, for the sake of playing them and just burn out. There are a lot of people I know out there who just play so many games and realize, wow, I've gotten nothing from these games, I've lost so many games, I hate Pokemon, I hate VGC, I'm quitting, stuff like that. Of course, they never really actually quit, but it's really easy to burn out if you play so many games, so try not to do that. You can play a lot of games, but go in with the right mentality, not the wrong one. Seek to improve. Never give up until the battle declares a winner. I think there are a lot of times where players just don't recognize a win condition at the end. Sometimes they'll be down 2-4 and they'll be like, oh, I'm so far behind, I already lost. But there have been so many great examples of comebacks in VGC history, so definitely don't give up until the game says so-and-so won and so-and-so lost, because almost always there's a fighting chance, and all you need is one small window of opportunity to get back into the game. Definitely don't ignore your wins either, because there's a lot that you can learn from that as well. You know, I like to look at battle videos regardless of whether I win or lose, because in the ones I win, I can look at, hey, what did I do right here? What did my opponent do wrong? What could have my opponent did better? Were there any safer plays I could have made, etc. So I think it's good to analyze what you did right and what you did wrong. Definitely don't be scared to be confident. Confidence is a pretty important thing. You know, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, and I think arrogance is bad in Pokemon and really in life in general. But confidence is a pretty important thing to have. We only get better as players if you can go into a game feeling good about yourself and your team. The last one also ties into confidence, but it's about being scared of your opponent. I think a lot of us out here are scared of playing top level players, especially, you know, newer players. And whenever I run into a newer player that tells me, wow, I'm really scared of playing you at a tournament, I just tell I tell them, you know, I'm just another person who plays Pokemon. Like, you can easily beat me. Don't have that kind of mentality. Just work your hardest and do your best. And, you know, none of us are perfect at this game, so anyone can beat anyone on a good day. So now I've got some top advice from players that I gathered from Twitter, and there are actually a lot more responses. So if you want to see that those responses, just go on Twitter, my Twitter, CybertronVGC. Click the tweet I made asking about advice I wanted from other players, and check those out. But a couple ones. Paul Chua, Polytoad said, keep playing and learn from your mistakes. MB McCurry says, be confident but be realistic, which I think is a really great point. You know, if you're a starting player, you're not going to be a world champion after a day. So keep a goal in mind and be realistic about your chances of winning and improving. Pukar says, your mental game is super important, and that's pretty generic, but also very important. Pokemon's a lot of, mental strength, so don't get too down on yourself. Take a break if you need, because, like I said, if you play too many games and burn out, or if you get too down on yourself, it just does not make your chances of winning the best. MacPlay says, this ties into what I said previously. Don't blame hacks, don't blame luck, and don't blame your opponent. Stop pointing fingers and look at what you are doing, which I think is a fantastic point. This next one also ties into what I said previously, but Glitch Plight says, don't let scores get to your head and focus on figuring out how to win the battle in front of you, which I really like there. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're up 3-4, 2-4, or whether you're down 3-4, 2-4. There's always a window of opportunities, so use that. And this one is a quote I really like. It's from Scott Glazo, who's the commentator at Regionals, Nationals, and Worlds. He says, don't take unnecessary risks, learn why other top players are successful instead of finding reasons why you think they shouldn't be. And stop making excuses for why things aren't working and try to find ways to win games in front of you. So ultimately, the top players are top players for a reason, and they do the things that are right. So try to learn from them instead of saying, wow, I don't understand how he or she is a top player, he's so bad, she's so bad, etc. I think that's pretty important, and I think these are all pretty good pieces of advice. A couple more points that I got. Ryuzaki VGC says, don't act all intimidated because you play someone famous. Anyone can beat someone, and anyone can beat anyone, and everyone loses sometimes. And that's really true. In competitive Pokemon especially, unlike other games, like when I look at competitive Smash, I'm always kind of amazed because it's the same top 6 players and whatnot. A couple players trying to break into there, whereas in sorry, that was my phone ringing there. Whereas in competitive Pokemon, because of RNG and because of how good players are getting nowadays, it's very difficult for everyone to win consistently. So don't be afraid if you're playing a really good player. Talon VGC says, it's good for players to look at the past for team inspiration, which is a great idea. There's so many players that have used past teams as inspiration. So many world champions, actually. Nikolai, who won Worlds and Seniors this past year, looked at Ray's 2012 World Championship winning team for inspiration, and Hui's 2010 team, which is where he came up with the idea of Trick Room Gengar and whatnot. So I like that a lot, and I think it's good to learn from previous years. Bobber VGC says, stop using bad Pokemon, learn to make spreads. Just because a Pokemon fills a niche doesn't mean it's the best for the team. And I think this is a really great piece of advice as well, especially for beginning players who often try to be creative for the sake of being creative rather than for the sake of winning. And of course, everyone has different goals in competitive Pokemon, but if you're trying to win games, you should try to optimize your team to the best of its abilities. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't use Pokemon you like. If you want to just enjoy Pokemon, definitely just use whatever you want. But I think Bopper's point here is that a lot of players like to just use Pokemon for the sake of using them rather than really realizing, oh, a better Pokemon could probably fill this role. So I like that a lot. The Shiny Furfrou says, play for the end game, not an immediate advantage, which I also like. Always keep the end of the game in mind and not the beginning turns, because ultimately it's whoever wins in the very last turn that that really matters. And finally, VT Router says, find a team and get comfortable with it. Knowing how to play with the team is as, if not more, important than having a good team, which is a really great piece of advice. For me, I think the most important thing whenever I go into any competitive tournament setting is, am I confident with this team? It's still a point where one of the reasons why I brought like the Mega Venusaur team to St. Louis Regionals was because I had so much more practice with that team than any other team. The worst case is when you're at a tournament and you realize, wow, I have no idea how to play with this team, I have no idea what to do, I'm just not confident with it all, and that can quickly throw you off your mental game, which is why I like practice, for the sake of understanding your team better and whatnot. So those are a couple pieces of advice I can give you from a bunch of players that I asked on Twitter. Thank you to everyone. I've included all their Twitter handles if you want to follow them. They're all a bunch of great people out there, so thank you all so much for those pieces of advice that really tie into what I was saying earlier. So in conclusion, what do you want to do if you want to get better at competitive Pokemon in VGC 15? Practice hard, learn from both your wins and losses, watch videos of top level play to learn from the best players in the world. Remember that each turn in Pokemon is like a puzzle piece. You definitely have to think hard and make the best play possible, and take your time, don't be afraid, don't, lock into your moves and then think to yourself, wow, I might really regret that, which is a bad habit even I do. I'm still improving at this game as well. There are so many times in Road to Rank where I'll make the moves in the first 15 seconds and realize, what in the world did I just do? So keep that in mind. I think this is really important ultimately. You only get better when you seek improvement. If you're losing and you're like, wow, I don't want to get better at this game sucks, so much luck, blah, 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 you're not going to get better. You only are going to get better when you realize it's okay to lose. It's okay to lose to RNG. It's okay if, I lose to someone who I thought might have been a worse player than me, etc. Because learning from your mistakes ultimately is the most important thing. Finally, please remember to respect the game and its players. We play a game that's very RNG based and very luck based. But like I said, there's only so much RNG and luck in the game. A lot of it comes down to how can I optimize my plays and how can I be a better player. And on the topic of consistency, while it's not the same players winning tournaments all the time, I think it's a testament that players who've done in previous years can do well every year. Like there's a reason why Ray Rizzo won 3 World Championships, or Sage Park's Top Cut 4 World Championships, or Wolfie Glick's won 2 US National Championships, etc. There's a reason why these top players are always on the top. There's a reason why Wolfie's still on the top of the championship win circuit today. So even though, this game is a game that can be very frustrating sometimes, remember to respect it, to enjoy it, and to ultimately, have fun and learn from your mistakes and your wins. Anyway, that's it for this one. I know it's pretty generic, but I feel like there was a bunch of good advice that players, both new and old, could use. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one. As always, leave a like if you did. If you did not watch Road to Ranked yesterday, or earlier today, definitely check that out. Anyway, that's it for this one, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Alright, peace.